press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.
The following graph gives information about percentages by age and sex. The items include age groups, female and male. According to this graph, in male, the value of 85 plus is around 0.7, and that of 75 to 84 is higher, which is around 3. You can see from this graph that the highest value of female is in 25 to 34, which is 16.5. You can also see from this graph that the value of less than 4 is 7.8. In conclusion, 85 plus has the lowest percentage of population in female. The following graph gives information about Europe. Positions of different countries are displayed on the map. At the central area, there are Austria, Germany, Poland, and Czechia. In the left area, there are Ireland and Portugal. According to this graph, the largest country is Russia, which is located on the right side. In comparison, small countries include Denmark and Belgium. In conclusion, there are many European countries shown on the map. The following graph gives information about average weekly household expenditure. According to this graph, the items include food, medical, transport, and holidays. You can see from this graph that the value of food is 123. And the value of medical care is 50. The value of transport is 124. According to this graph, the value of holiday is 33. As you can also see that the value of housing is 164. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about fast food times a week. The items include every day, once a week, and never. According to this graph, in several times a week, the value of July 2003 is around 17%, and that of 2013 is lower, which is around 16%. You can see from this graph that the highest value of December 2006 is in about once a week, around 33%. You can also see from this graph that the lowest value of July 2013 is in every day, around 3%. In conclusion, Americans usually eat fast food. The following graph gives information about fast food consumption by meal. The items include breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack. According to this graph, in breakfast, the value is around 22.7%, and that of snack is lower, which is around 22.6%. You can see from this graph that the highest value of lunch is 43.7. You can also see from this graph that the second highest value of dinner is 42%. In conclusion, fast food consumption has 4 kinds. The following graph gives information about fast food times a week. The items include every day, once a week, and never. According to this graph, in several times a week, the value of July 2003 is around 17%, and that of 2013 is lower, which is around 16%. You can see from this graph that the highest value of December 2006 is in about once a week, around 33%. You can also see from this graph that the lowest value of July 2013 is in every day, around 3%. In conclusion, Americans usually eat fast food. The following graph gives information about the world's most powerful passports. The items include countries' names, their ranks, and visa-free countries' numbers. According to this graph, in the first row, the value of Japan is 193. And in the second row, the value of Singapore is 192. You can see from this graph that the third highest value is in South Korea, which is 191. You can also see from this graph that the lowest value is in Luxembourg, which is 190. In conclusion, Japan has the most powerful passport. The following graph gives information about plastic bottle recycling. The steps include new bottles, refilling, used bottles, and plastic processing, and according to this graph, the first step is newly produced bottles, which are empty. According to this graph, the second step is to fill the empty bottles with beverage. You can see from this graph that the third step is to open the bottles and drink up it, followed by the fourth step is to transport used bottles back to the factory and use them as materials. The final step is the plastic materials turn into new bottles, waiting for refilling. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about how tomatoes come to consumers. The steps include a tomato tree, transportation, filtering, packaging. According to this graph, the first step is the tomato tree, which grows many tomatoes on the branches. According to this graph, the second step is to transport tomatoes by a green truck. You can see from this graph that the third step is to filter bad tomatoes out on a conveyor belt, followed by a crate full of good tomatoes as the fourth step. The final step is to fill the shopping cart with the good tomatoes for consumers. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about Lichfield population. The horizontal axis is the years, ranging from 1901 to 2011. According to this graph, in the year of 1911, the value is around 8,000. And according to this graph, in the year of 1941, value is around 10,000. The highest value is around 32,500, which is in 2011. On the contrary, the lowest value is 7,000, which is in 1901. In conclusion, if this trend continues, the Lichfield population will keep rising in the future. The graph provides information about Internet users by age group. The groups include 16 to 24, 55 to 64, and 65 plus. In the 45 to 54 group, the value is about 32%. In the 35 to 44 group, it's around 50%, while in the 16 to 24 group, the value is 70%, the highest. For the 65 plus group, it's 8%, the lowest. In conclusion, the graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about how a ship lock works. It shows how the process is done. The items include a ship lock, a ship, dams, and pipes under the bottom. You can see from this graph that the first step is that the upstream gate opens, and the ship goes into the lock. You can see from this graph that the second step is that the upstream gate closes, and the water level evens. You can see from this graph that the third step is that the downstream gate opens, and the ship moves out of the lock. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The graph provides information about e-waste, detailing electronic and electric waste percentages. In electronic waste, monitors and televisions each account for around 10%, while computers, telephones, fax machines, and printers comprise about 15%. In electric waste, washing machines, dryers, air conditioners, and vacuum cleaners represent around 30%, the highest value. Overall, the graph is quite informative. The following graph gives information about the mosquito life cycle. It shows how the process is done. The items include adult, eggs, larvae, and pupa. You can see from this graph that the first step is the adult laying eggs into water. You can see from this graph that the second step is eggs developing as the larva below the water surface. You can see from this graph that the third step is the larva developing as the pupa. The following graph gives information about women in the labor force. The items include percentage, years, and marital status. You can see from this graph that, in 1920, the value of married is around 10%. You can see from this graph that, in 1910, the value of not married is around 60%, which is higher. You can see from this graph that, in 1990, the value of not married is around 80%, which is the highest. You can also see from this graph that, in 1900, the value of married is around 5%, which is the lowest. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The graph provides a detailed overview of the handwashing process, illustrating each step clearly. It starts with wetting the hands, followed by taking liquid soap. The next step is to rub the hands together to create lather, then to rub the backs of the hands. After that, you should rub the thumbs, ensuring every part of the hands is cleaned. The final step is to rinse thoroughly with running water. Overall, this graph is very informative and serves as an excellent guide to proper handwashing techniques. The following graph gives information about the rainforest distribution in South America. According to this graph, the largest part of rainforest is in Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, Suriname, which is tropical rainforest, colored with light green. We can also see a narrow, long stretch of tropical rainforest lying along the eastern coast of South America, next to Atlantic Ocean. And a other stretch is located along the northwest coast of South America, next to Pacific Ocean. We see temperate rainforests in Chile, the southmost area of South America, colored with dark green. In conclusion, this is an informative map. The line chart illustrates median pre-tax income by age and gender in the UK, showing that male income starts at 12,000 under 20, peaks at 30,000 for ages 45 to 49, and drops to 18,000 at 70 to 74. Female income begins at 11,000, reaches a high of 21,000 at ages 30 to 34, and falls to 15,000 at 70 and over, while both genders peak at 25,000 for ages 35 to 39 before declining to 17,000 at 70 and over, with female income being the lowest, followed by both genders, and male income the highest. The following graph gives information about water cycle in nature. It shows how the process is done. The steps include evaporation, transportation, precipitation, and surface runoff. According to this graph, the first step is evaporation in the sun, with water forming clouds into the sky from the blue sea. The second step is clouds transportation into the sky above green and gray mountains, followed by the third step of precipitation, in which water forms surface runoffs. The final step is surface runoffs going to the sea. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about journeys made in the UK in 2006 according to their purpose. The items include walking, education, shopping, personal business, school run, day trip, sport, entertainment, and commuting. According to this graph, in walking, the value of men and women are around 4%. You can see from this graph that the highest value of women is in shopping, which is 23%, and the highest value of men is in commuting and business, which is 23%. In conclusion, men and women have the lowest value in holiday and day trip, which around 3%.